Good evening. Welcome to the Glazov Gang. Tonight, a very special episode with a very special guest, Dr. Phyllis Chesler, an emerita professor of psychology and women's studies at City University of New York. She is a best-selling author, legendary feminist leader, a fellow at the Middle East Forum, and she is the author of 15 books, which includes her new memoir just out, An American Bride in Kabul. Dr. Chesler, welcome to the program.
My pleasure to be with you.
Fascinating new memoir, Dr. Chesler. Thank you so much for writing it. And overall, you're showing and telling the story of how you were taken hostage as a young girl in Afghanistan. And as we know, due to this experience, it purged in you any capacity or ability, I would say, to become a leftist in the future, or leftist feminist, because ever since then you've been very concerned about the victims of Islamic gender apartheid and shining a light on them. Before we get to the memoir, tell us a little bit about what I just said.
Well, I learned that America is actually the best country in the world, not the worst one, and that many countries that are barbaric are indigenously barbaric, not caused by Western imperialism or colonialism, and that the poverty and the tyranny and the corruption, the pettiness, is beyond the comprehension of most people in the West. So when I was only 18 when I met this man, and perhaps I was hostage already to my illusions about travel and grand adventures that Westerners can embark on and return unscathed. This is an illusion, because when travelers from the West go to the wild, wild East, they get malaria, they get dysentery, they get hepatitis. I got 2 of those. And many will get kidnapped, held for ransom, kidnapped, never seen again. This is the wild, wild East that has drawn the Western imagination for many reasons over the years, and I was one of them.
Dr. Chesler, now you wrote, this is an on-the-edge-of-your-seat thriller. I couldn't put it down. I recommend all our viewers to get this memoir, An American Bride in Kabul, and so many powerful lessons in it about our culture war and our terror war and what we're dealing with. Dr. Chesler, but just tell us briefly here, you fell in love with this Afghan man, you guys got married, and all of a sudden you're in Afghanistan, your passport is taken from you, and you literally become a hostage. Paint that picture for us a little bit.
He was westernized and sophisticated and charming, and we married because he said we had to if we were going to travel in the Islamic world and meet his family. He didn't tell me, and I would be trapped there. So for me, it was a grand lark with 1 semester left of college. When we arrived, indeed, as you said, an official takes away my passport, and I see that my father-in-law has 3 wives, I have 3 mother-in-laws, and I'm expected to live with 1 mother-in-law. And basically in Purdah, I was not allowed to go out by myself. I had to be escorted by a chauffeur, a female relative, and a male relative. And that was pretty shocking because he didn't prepare me for this. Nor was I prepared for the kind of separation between men and women. He was gone with his brothers and father in the city all day. I was left at home with the women who hung out with the female servants, with the children, who went to the tailor perhaps, who visited female relatives, and who, in short, did nothing. I'm a budding, ambitious intellectual. There I was, stuck. I wanted to see the mountains. I wanted to visit the shrines, the architecture. Couldn't do it.
Dr. Chesler, so many fascinating, interesting things you write about in your memoir. Let me touch on a few of them. For instance, when you arrived in Afghanistan, you noticed that a lot of these Afghan warriors were walking around holding hands with flowers behind their ears, and we know that under Sharia law and in the Islamic world, homosexuality is demonized, homosexuals are executed, and then at the same time, you saw this with your own eyes, and yet there was denial all around you. Tell us a little bit about this.
Yeah, the denial is nobody's homosexual. I didn't see what I saw. Because to say something that's shameful or forbidden is very dangerous. So what you do is pretend it's not happening before your very eyes. I'd say many years later, my Afghan husband admitted, after I'd written pieces and after a documentary came out about the dancing boys of Kandahar, the prey of the pederast warlords, he said, well, it's only true in Kandahar and only since the Soviets invaded. Now, that's not true, but that's how Afghans and Muslims deal with shameful, secret, hidden things. Like, there's no honor killing either. Now, I heard of them, and I've become an expert in the world, arguably, on the subject now. And when I would ask my Afghan husband, honor killings, he'd say, never heard of it, don't know about it, not really that interested. And I tried, and he's a very modern guy. I said, have you heard of the Shafia case in Canada? And the prosecutor made my day. He said that the prosecution relied on my research in their prosecution of these Afghan wealthy people who killed 3 biological daughters and an unwanted first wife who protected the daughters. He didn't want to know about it, didn't read about it, didn't want to hear about it. So anything that's shameful is denied. Anyone who exposes that which is potentially shameful in Western eyes is a traitor and dangerous.
And Dr. Chesler, thank you for shedding a light on these things and on the suffering, especially of women under Islamic gender apartheid, and of course of all dissidents and suffering people. I was fascinated that while you were with your quote-unquote family in Afghanistan, that, you know, you would sometimes go to your room and want to read a book or spend some time on your own, have a little bit of privacy. And there was a lot of disapproval, if that is one word I could use about this. They thought that maybe you were depressed or whatever it was, but they did not like you reading or spending time on your own. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, an educated woman is a foreign, is Western, and is frightening and maybe conspiring or thinking her own thoughts and then doing something of her own independently. That's foreign because the way things were, this was 1961, and I think it's back there and maybe going on its way to the 7th century. You do everything together. The family watches you and monitors you, and in the name of family solidarity, because our concept of individual rights, the importance of the individual, the need for privacy, and so on, is a foreign concept. Their psychology is the group is all that matters. The family, the tribe, and then ultimately the country if it's against the West. Our idea of each individual has dignity and humanity and rights is a foreign concept.
And self-determination is treachery.
Yes, because you could then leave your family or choose who you want to marry or maybe disobey the king or get your entire family in trouble, as we've recently seen those who tried to help a Romeo and Juliet couple in Afghanistan. This is in 2014, who are now in hiding because they wanted to marry each other against family approval. Those who helped them are now being death threatened. So it's dangerous to choose a love partner. And my Afghan husband committed a great crime, a sin, a foolishness. He brought an infidel American Westerner who is also Jewish home to his family, thinking, no problem, and thinking, well, I would adjust, and thinking that I would come to enjoy the diplomatic parties and the glamorous travel. He misjudged me entirely, and he misjudged his country entirely. He thought he could modernize it. He was a dreamer, and he helped work on the Constitution that it's a scrap of paper. And he said to me, don't worry, Phyllis, the burqas are on their way out. And a burqa is a sensory deprivation, it's a sensory deprivation chamber, isolation chamber, and an ambulatory body bag which the West should ban. It is flying the flag of chick up front, radical Islam. And it is not a good thing from a woman's rights point of view and from a health point of view as well.
And Dr. Chesler, exactly what you're saying right now, because your memoir and your other great books, including The Death of Feminism, cast a light on the suffering of women under Islamic gender apartheid. It called out the hypocrisy of the left and of the feminist left in the West that's turned a blind eye. So now what I want to ask is, now you come out with this memoir. What have the leftist feminists and the left done now? Do they continue to try to pretend that you don't exist and that your books don't exist?
Yes. In short, yes. A few people may call and whisper, oh, what a brave thing, you've been right all along. One feminist leader stands with me, and that's Kate Millett. Mm-hmm. But she was in Iran and was arrested by Khomeini. So she got it. She got it. Mm-hmm. And most of the academic feminists are post-colonial, postmodern morons who believe they're multicultural relativists. They think what's good for us here might be very different for people over there. And if a man in Afghanistan wants to kill with impunity his daughter for disobeying some custom, well, who are we to judge? We are such racists, we are such imperialists, when in fact Islam has an even darker history of imperialism and colonialism and anti-black racism and conversion by the sword and misogyny that's even greater, dare I say it, yes, of course I do, even greater than the misogyny that is criticized, demonized among the Christian right wing and Orthodox Jews. Yeah. So feminists will criticize the misogyny of Christianity and Judaism, but they don't dare touch Islam because, my God, that would be Islamophobic, wouldn't it?
And Dr. Chesler, I just want to say this, that a brave and noble warrior like you for freedom, it's because of people like you that those schoolgirls, for instance, 276, I think, in Nigeria, and the future victims like that, we know about them, and they might be rescued, and future victims might be protected because of people like you that tell the truth. And the people that call you a racist and Islamophobe and those leftist feminists, in reality, they are on the side, they are complicit with the rapists and torturers of those young schoolgirls, because by engaging in their Islam denial, they are literally allied with the perpetrators of a mass crime like that in Nigeria. They're with those people.
It's even worse than that, because they have made a devil's bargain with those Islamists who wish to topple the very Western civilization that has given them their educations and their tenured perches. And they don't see it. And the blindness, it gives me no joy to criticize them and to stand as a real feminist against them. I feel very sorry that educated, rational people don't get it, do not get it.
Thank you, Dr. Chesler. Before we run out of time, we have a few minutes left. Again, the light you shone on the cruelty, not only of Sharia law, but what Sharia law nurtures in its victims, because there's a reality there of the women that are victims, and yet many of the women end up being cruel to other women. And you painted very painfully this picture of your mother-in-law, for instance, Bibigo, who was beating one of her servants, Dada. And just that really stayed with me. I'd like to ask you a little bit about that dynamic, and also a little bit about what happened to Dada, if you can tell us.
Yes, well, if the women are badly treated by men and have no power and are confined to the home in purdah, who can they take their aggressions out on, and who could they have power over? Daughter-in-laws and female servants. And the men don't interfere with this. This is female realm. So Dada had nowhere to go. She accepted the beatings with a toothless smile because Bibigul had promised to bury her. And another female servant who she beat and then accused of terrible things like sleeping with all the men in town, not possible, and she fired her. And that poor girl left weeping, very pregnant, losing the job, which helped her family in the provinces survive, going to give birth in a very cold winter remote region. So as bad as the servants may be treated, they have a roof over their head that they don't have to pay for, and they have food, leftover food, and they send money home. So the values, the whole system of poor countries is so incomprehensible to most Americans, to most Westerners. I want to say something that the reason I wrote the book now and not 50 years ago is because post 9/11, I felt I had to speak with some street cred about my experiences of Islamic gender apartheid, which I lived, and what it means now in the future for all of us, since Afghanistan has followed us into the future and into the West. The burqas that I saw at the back of the bus in Kabul are here on American and certainly European streets. I think they are a human rights and a woman's rights violation. And I also think that the country that held me hostage gave shelter to bin Laden. And now we're all civilians held hostage by that brand of very diabolical jihad and terrorism. So I felt I had to speak and share what I learned.
Dr. Chesler, thank you so much, and you're so right that the reader, our viewers, will have to read the book to find out about your escape and how you got out after being a hostage in Afghanistan. But you are so correct that you escaped from Afghanistan, and now, frighteningly enough, Afghanistan has and is coming to us.
Yeah.
Dr. Chesler, thank you so much for coming on the Glazov Gang and for writing An American Bride in Kabul. All of our viewers have got to get their hands on this wonderful and powerful memoir. Dr. Chesler, thank you for writing it.
Thank you very much, Jamie.
And Dr. Chesler, thank you for everything that you've done for the cause of freedom and for human rights throughout the world, and the noble and brave way in which you've done it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We hope we'll see you again, and we'll see you next week on the Glazov Gang. Thank you for joining us.